Chapter.
Right. Thank you anyhow. Okay.
Well,
The Board of Education has been in closed executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, and compensation of specific employees of the public body, the purchase or lease of real property for use of the public body, and discussion of collective negotiating matters between the board and representatives of its employees. No action was taken during closed executive session. I will now ask everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance Do we have a recommendation for tonight's agenda?
Yes, we do. I recommend the board approve tonight's August 9th, 2022 open session board meeting agenda as presented.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Can I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We will now move on to our public participation. The Board of Education would like to note the following during public participation. Identify oneself and be brief. Any public comments received will be read during this time. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes. For our listening audience, please note that during Board of Education meetings and public participation, board members do not respond and or comment to public comments. All comments are referred to administration. Therefore, the board refrains from referring to specific students or staff members by name and requests that public commenters refrain from doing so as well. The request that you omit names is made to protect you from allegations of libel or slander or from violations of the Illinois School Student Records Act. It is not intended to shield an employee from criticism. Ms. Bradford, do we have anyone wishing to speak to the board this evening, or we have any that have sent comments in that would be added to the record?
Yes, we do. Renee Hinkle.
Guys, bear with me, I'm real nervous. My name is Renee Hinkle. I'm speaking to you today to let you know that there are a lot of us that support Dennis getting a new building. And although I understand the timeline and other issues, I feel like you gave up on the project and 2 seconds later switched your focus. We know how ADA feels, as we've had a thriving middle school sports program without a suitable gym for going on 10 years now, since my son was in the very first graduating middle school class. My daughter said, and I quote, "I am a 12-year-old athlete who attends Dennis Lab Middle School. As an athlete, all of our home gym games are hosted at Tabernacle Church, not our school gym, a church gym. It's odd to be in a gym not at our school, yet playing for our school. We need our own gym that we can be proud of. I've never been able to experience the feeling of winning a big game in our home gym. Not only are the buildings and lack of sports facilities an issue, Dennis is not able to fully implement their project-based learning curriculum, being split between 2 buildings. The staff has tried to make it work, but it's not the same. The whole PBL program can't be run effectively. My daughter's favorite part when she was younger was the buddy system. The older kids and teachers worked with the younger kids. It built confidence and accelerated learning within the younger kids, and leadership and mentoring skills in the older. And the teachers created bonds with the kids coming up. My daughter already knew and loved her future teachers. And that whole dynamic is pretty much gone now. That's so important these days, especially after COVID. Dennis has always been pushed to the side when there were updates to the district, but at this time, Dennis needs to be a priority. You've got 600 kids on the West End that need your help. They need to be under one roof. They need more classrooms. They need common areas. I hope we can come up with a viable plan. If it isn't going to be built now, what is your solution for our kids? Thank you.
Jacob Jenkins.
Hang on, Jacob. I want to clean it for you.
Not a problem.
Well, I just have questions today. So good evening. My name is Jacob Jenkins, and I'm here today to ask a few questions with my 3 minutes. Why are children going back to American Dreamers on August 15th after Dan Oaks said on the news they could get sick from asbestos? Why did you all mislead Dennis into thinking this was a done deal? Why won't you pay teachers more since you have $41 million to spend? Why did you not post the Human Resource Director job long enough instead of rehiring Deanne Hillman at $611 a day? Why do you keep changing the board policy every meeting to cover up your unethical and morally reprehensible behavior? Why are the test scores in this district one of the lowest in Central Illinois? Why are half of the ninth graders failing? Why are you so fixated on the new building when you're losing staff at such a rapid rate? What is your fixation with making this district a destination district when it is clearly a school to prison pipeline that should be addressed? Is it true that less than 6% of your third graders can read at grade level? If so, what interventions have you put in place for the upcoming school year? Why do you keep paying off black administrators when they leave and force them to accept NDAs? What are you hiding? Why are we on our fourth superintendent in 8 years when the average for one superintendent is 5 years? These are just a few questions I have for this board.
Phil Winnicky. I think I pronounced that right.
Hello, my name is Phil Winnicky. I've been a teacher at Dennis for 6 years. Let's set the record straight on Dennis. Dennis is a neighborhood school, not a choice magnet program. Our focus has been project-based learning for almost 10 years, and one of the main tenets of PBL is to encourage students to find solutions to problems in their lives. Dennis has practiced what is preached for these last 10 years. We've worked with Milliken to offer opportunities to our students that no other building in the district can provide. We had a plan when we expanded to include the middle school. We formed a partnership with the DIS to host our PE program. We formed a partnership with Tabernacle to help run our athletic programs. We continue trying to find solutions to the dual campus issues. We worked out of closets and on stairwell landings and stages. We worked around not enough lockers for all of our students. We worked through the proper channels, not complaining on social media, to convey our needs and our issues. Point being, staff, students, and families at Dennis have been making it work for 10 years with the understanding that our time will come. And now that we have an opportunity to solve our problems and really let our program bloom, we are again dropped to the bottom of the list because the board screwed up the opportunity. This board and district are happy to trot out Dennis for our successful program when it suits their needs, but leave us out to dry when we express our problems. In fact, the tide has turned so dramatically over the summer that Dennis is now fighting against the board. We have a board member telling Dennis supporters on social media that they, quote, need to be far more vocal than they have been. That's why I'm here. Another board member says on social media that Dennis was in fact next in line for updates, but things have changed. Another board member posted about Dennis during closed executive session time today, and that they will vote no on anything outside West End. This board is operating on social media instead of during public open sessions with input from the entire community, not just whoever has access to social media at the moment. So the board isn't concerned with equity or building out a successful program, just whoever makes the most noise on social media. Then board members can go onto their social media to make public comments and statements to posture and look good in support of the squeaky wheel, even if it's contradictory. For example, we have another board member stating that their only concern with Dennis is ADA and air conditioning, and we don't need a new building because those are the only real issues. But another building has stated that their problems, which are almost identical to the problems at Dennis, problems that Dennis has faced and worked on for the last 10 years, but now they're getting a discussion of a new building during the finance meeting yesterday. So now that the board has made it clear that they will only listen to and act on complaints made in public, the Dennis community will continue to be vocal until his board puts a plan in place. Because right now, there is no plan and there is no direction on this board.
Sarah Nave.
Good evening, Superintendent and Board of Education. My name is Sarah Nave, and I teach at Dennis Lab School. Tomorrow will be the first day of my 11th year teaching for this district. If you ask any of my former students about me, they'll tell you three things. I'm loud, I have way too much energy, and I love my students, which is why I'm here. I'm not going to lie, as of 4 p.m. I had a completely different speech prepared, and as I sat down to write this revised version, I began asking myself some very important questions. Number one, what do we need to be successful? What opportunities do I want to give my students that I currently cannot give them? And number three, what don't I want to lose that we currently have? To be a successful building, we need each educator to have their own space large enough to educate their caseload of students. No educator should be forced into a closet or into an office when they are expected to be teaching groups of 10 or more students. To be a successful building, we need common areas where our students can collaborate, work across grade levels, and work through stages of project-based learning. To be a successful building, we need facilities on site so that our students' parents are not having to choose between going to work and taking their child to a sports practice clear across town. To be a successful building, we need a safe way for our staff members and our families to enter our parking lot. To be a successful building, we need to be under one roof so we can plan, create, and observe one another to better our students. Currently, there are many opportunities I wish I could give my students that I cannot. I wish my 8th graders were able to work with their kindergarten buddies again. We saw so much growth in their reading that year. I wish our middle schoolers had places to exhibit their art projects, PBL projects, and assignments that they worked their butts off to do, but we literally don't have any space. I wish our students were able to check in with their younger siblings when they had just had a death in the family, a traumatic accident, or just having a bad day. I wish our kids had the opportunity to run on a track, play on a court, or practice on a field before their first game or meet. Kind of embarrassing when you don't know where the relay zone is because you've never seen a track before. And what don't I want to lose? The partnership with Milliken, the passion, drive, and support of our community. Dennis School has 112 years of history, but as an educator and an advocate for my students, I graciously ask that you consider building a school for the future. I know that it is going to be a task, but know that you have our support. Ultimately, what's best for our students in the long game is a school that can foster their learning and give them opportunities to thrive. I'm asking that each one of you take time out of your very busy schedules to come to Mosaic, come to Kaleidoscope, walk our halls, actually see our need. I also ask that you try to send that survey out in another form to gather as many responses as possible, because some of our own staff members didn't receive the robocall this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Lexi Groves.
Good evening. My name is Lexi Groves, and I will be starting my junior year at MacArthur next week. I am here because I am an alumni of Dennis Lab School. I went to Dennis from kindergarten through 8th grade. There are many amazing things about Dennis that I have grown to love, but have changed drastically since I have graduated. PBL has always played a large role in my learning at Dennis. In 3rd grade, we made the mosaic a city landmark. We also built the stage and the garden beds at the community garden. We learned how to be entrepreneurs in 5th grade and made and sold our projects at the Christmas fair. In middle school, we had the first all-district art fair. We created stock portfolios, and my teacher over there still holds the stock my group suggested. What made all of these projects so successful was the collaboration with other grade levels. With school splitting, they are unable to continue projects like this without using virtual assistants, and we all know how great our internet is. PBL is what makes Dennis so special, and they can't even do buddies anymore. Sports. I am currently a 3-sport athlete at MAC. In middle school, I was a 4-sport athlete. For cheer, my language arts teacher had to give up her classroom because there was no other place to practice. For track, we used the wood chips for long jump and the hilly parking lot relays. Hurdles, just ask my coach to show her knees after falling on concrete. Our coaches had to beg schools to give us time on their track. It's bad when Macon schools will give us their track, but Decatur schools wouldn't be bothered by middle school sports. Volleyball practices were a joke because of how low our ceilings were, and we had to pray we had rides to the church to play in games. Dennis needs a new building. It is time for them to be able to compete because they have facilities. It is time for them to be able to collaborate with others. It is time for the district to step up and step in. Their bathrooms are small and double as a locker room without any lockers. Their cafeteria is not even big enough to have the middle school in there at one time. The gas leaks are unsafe. The pickup lines are dangerous. It is not fair that the teachers and students continue to make do. They are only giving empty promises. Thank you very much.
Tony Hawley.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tony Hawley. I've been privileged to be the volleyball coach at Dennis Lab School, going on my 5th season coming up this winter. I've been a coach for over 20 years. I've coached in many places across Central Illinois. I've coached at all levels: college, high school, junior high. I've coached lawyers. I've coached doctors. I've even coached one Olympian. And I recall I've even coached a member on this board's daughter for a while. I know you've heard a lot about Dennis and what we're lacking. I know we've emphasized athletics, but these points that everybody's made, these are valid points. What these kids are doing without, no district should allow their student athletes who are representing them not to have. I show up in the winter because our practices were the last sport that gets going. So at 7 to 9 p.m. we practice, and when I come to practice, I bring my clipboard, and I usually bring pans of lasagna, sandwiches, hot dogs, because my kids stay after school and wait for their practice at 7 to start, and they miss a meal if I don't feed them. And no athlete should have to choose between going home, taking some time off, or practice. So to eliminate that barrier, we take extraordinary steps. And you've heard about the resiliency of this community, and we're a resilient group. We do a lot of things as staff. We adapt, and our kids are resilient, and they deserve consideration for this. They're in a facility where they practice at isn't even regulation. So when they compete, sometimes in the beginning they make errors because they're in a small gym they're not used to. Our kids stay in the hallway waiting outside for a practice. They wait for rides after 9 p.m. We have to coerce them into participating in sports because they know it's going to be a late night activity where other schools don't have to worry about that. We can do better as a community for all our children. And we're not asking you to make a choice over one group of students or the other. We're just asking you to do better for all our students because they're proud to represent you, and we know you're proud of them. We just want you to show it. One of our modifiers is, this is a picture of our volleyball team. In the background, that's not a volleyball court that exists in our school district. That's a digital background because we take a picture of each child behind a green screen and we superimpose them on a facility because who wants to take a picture on a linoleum floor in an area that's a cafeteria? They're proud of this picture, they're proud to wear the uniform, and they're proud to represent you as a community. So please take that into consideration. Please know that they always want to be Dennis proud and their DPS proud as well. Thank you for your time.
Brett Robertson.
Good evening, Board. I'm Brett Robertson. I was disappointed yesterday by the Finance Committee's dismissal of the Woodrow Wilson site. There were 3 concerns expressed, and I'd like to address all 3 of those. Before I do that, I want to remind the Board that Woodrow Wilson has compelling advantages, and I'd urge the Board to think outside the box when it comes to the current issues that have been discussed, both about Dennis and the American Dreamer Academy. The solution may not lie in a one-for-one replacement of those schools. Woodrow Wilson is the perfect site for a science academy because of its proximity to Milliken, as well as potentially a use for Dennis because of the proximity to Milliken. So it's a valuable location. The 3 objections brought up about Woodrow Wilson were: 1, the cost of remediation and rehabilitation, taking out the asbestos and so forth; the time to acquire the adjacent properties; and thirdly, concerns about crossing the railroad tracks. The third one, the railroad tracks, is one I think we should easily put aside. There's an underpass on Sunset Avenue less than a block away from Woodrow. I'd urge all of you to drive around the site and become a little bit familiar with it. There's also a second underpass 2 blocks north of Sunset. For this reason, access across the tracks were never an issue in the long decades of Woodrow Wilson's use as a school. So I'm kind of surprised to hear that come up. The cost of clearing out the asbestos in the innards of the old school is a capability that many Decatur firms have. For example, Christie Foltz is very familiar with this type of work. And even in a large structure like Woodrow Wilson, the cost of doing that would be significant, but unlikely to be more than about 10% of the total cost of erecting a school. So I would really urge you guys to get some specific estimates so that you can have more knowledge about, the specific numbers that it would take to do that. Finally, any project like Woodrow Wilson is complex, right? It should be done or could be done in a phased approach. Phase 1 might be rehab of the old structure to take out the innards. Phase 2 might be building the new innards, the new modern inside, right? And that would make the school usable. Phase 3 might then be the process of acquiring the surrounding properties, which everybody wants, but may take longer. But that doesn't mean the school couldn't be usable before that third phase was completed. So let's focus on doing the right things and the best things, even if they're not always the easiest things. Woodrow Wilson is the right site and should come back into the Decatur Public Schools portfolio as an option for the future. Thank you.
Will Wetzel?
Hello, my name is Will Wetzel. When I moved back here, I was gone for 12 years. I moved back to Decatur after 5 years. I've been back in Decatur 5 years. 3 years ago, I bought a house. And one of the things that you sit down and you talk to a realtor about is, where do you want your kids to go to school? 4 times our realtor asked me, "You sure you want to buy a house in Decatur Public Schools? Are you sure?" Her kids didn't go there. Friends of mine's kids who had grown up here, graduated Eisenhower High School with me, decided to move their families out. And when you speak to them, they mention all sorts of things. But one of the things that goes down to it is, for many of us who are millennials, who are younger, have looked and watched the absolute lack of transparency from this body at all phases over the past 30 years. It is absolutely insanity that we are at this point. You took something that was going to be beautiful, a new school, and you could have built community, you could have built a groundswell, you could have built community happiness, you could have done so much, but you decided to obfuscate what your goals were. You did not bring in the community. You did not do what most other communities have to do. Even if you could have bypassed a referenda, you could have said, hey, we want to put together a committee. We want to make sure that there are parents and teachers and people who are behind this, and they're going to go knock doors, they're going to put signs up, they're going to do all of these things that make schools happen. And you didn't. Somebody could have called me up and said, hey, Will, you want to go knock on 100 doors to get us into school? And I would have said, yes. Do you need $500 for signs? I would have said, yes. Absolutely. But no, you lied. And you went, and it makes no sense. There is nothing to gain from this at all. And when I talk to my friends who have no reference in their mind of Decatur, who have never been here, people that have grown up in different parts of this country and even out of this country, and you explain to them that we have 2,500 less students than when I graduated in 2003. We've closed between 18 and 22 schools. How you look at it since 1970. We've lost 25% of our population, and nobody can find a path forward. And not because there is no path forward. It's because no one wants to sit there and do the hard work. It's hard to get a new school. A godsend of money from the federal government does not give you a new school. Hard work is what makes it. And it's absolutely and incredibly shameful that we're in this position. And it's shameful that we have to continuously look at FOIA and continuously have to hold you accountable when you already should be and have the public trust, the best interest of the public trust. Thank you.
Lori Barrett.
Hi, my name is Lori Barrett, and after the recent events with Lincoln Park, we were asked by a board member on Facebook, what will the community support and where? I think you're going to get a million answers to that question. Each staff and teacher and community member and admin will have their own set of ideas. There are several of us who would like to see promises kept. The promises to American Dreamer STEM Academy, the promises to Dennis, and the promises to all the other schools, Franklin Grove, South Shores, that are calling for more improvements and upgrades. I think we might have closed a little too many schools a little too quickly, and we didn't account for the overcrowding that we created for ourselves. We can't do it all, but we can really not do it if we spend the majority on just one school. New buildings might attract teachers, but they don't stay if they're not supported. I would love to see a good chunk of money go for teacher retention and support. We have real issues in our classrooms. We have discipline problems. We have students behind a grade or more. Kids are not attending school much at all. Support within the classrooms and resources are what is truly needed. We have an after-school program that's pretty much just a daycare. Could we use tutors, volunteers, something to be added to help catch them up, to improve the test scores we all frown upon year after year? We had it for the 21st Century program when my child was at Stephen Decatur. And we have opportunities to create something like that now with the funds we have. Anything that does not include some sort of plan to give students and teachers what they need is a waste of money, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others. It's like we won the lottery. You can't run off and buy a yacht without paying off your bad debt. When the money runs out, the debt remains, only larger. We need to work on improving the test scores and the interaction with kids. Conversations with the community will give you the resources that you didn't even know you had. Conversations like some of you have reached out and had over the last month or so. Thank you for your time.
Bill Cleary.
Good evening. Thanks for, I'm watching you all pay attention. It's got to be hard to do to listen one comment after another. I did not prepare a speech. I do have something I want to read, but attended the Finance Committee meeting last night. It careened around quite a bit from turning down Woodrow Wilson to maybe possibly doing something for American Dreamers, and that turned into that place is really, really bad, and we really should have been building that school instead, is what it sounded like, just from a casual observer. But the main thing I'm seeing is shifting priorities based on how does these ESSER funds fit into our long-term building plans, and I'm telling you that's not the main purpose of the ESSER funds. I heard almost a term of art talking about this grant, the ESSER funds for the school. And it's kind of a term of art to me because you guys picked out what you're going to do with the funds. They didn't say, here, go build a school. I'm going to read when you guys had to amend your application. I'm going to read the Illinois State Board of Education's instructions to you so everybody understands the title. And there's some grammar issues, which are not mine. It's from the State Board of Education. The title team appreciate you taking time to discuss Decatur's ARP ESSER grant. As discussion in today's meeting, the U.S. Department of Education discourages local education associations from long-term construction projects because these are not workable under the shorter timelines associated with ESSER funds. And the final instruction here is please submit an ARP ESSER amendment to remove the new school building from that project from your. In other words, make it a less than truthful application. Remove you're going to want to build a new building, but for sure don't put it on the ARP application. It's a warning that they included a lot of references to risk you were taking. The timeline gets tighter and tighter. And that leads to the second thing, which the school board, Illinois board brought up, was this waiver of referendum. And you keep returning to that as some kind of permission by the state legislature to build this school with ESSER funds, and that has nothing to do with it. You've got your hands in our pockets right now, and you're saying, don't worry about it. It's not going to affect you taxpayers. But if you run over on this timeline, that's exactly what you're going to do, is you're going to steal money from us without our approval.
and we had the right to approve it until you did this. And there's not a state legislator that even warned us about it. Very mad about it. You're going to be hearing about it if you get closer and closer to running over on your September 30th. You'll be hearing a lot more from me.
Leanne Cleary?
Hi, my name is Leanne Cleary. Again, I was at the Finance Committee meeting last night, and I have some comments to make about that. It was apparent to me last night that the current board has no clue as to long-term planning. In half an hour, you dismissed a new building for Dennis. Talked about updating the Woodrow Wilson location, threw that away. Talked about doing upgrades to American STEM Academy, threw that away, and ended up discussing a new STEM Academy in Oak Grove. It was obvious that none of the board knew how bad the STEM building was or how inadequate the facilities were. The former French students who are now STEM seem to be thrown away. From what I heard last night, STEM is a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics focused program in name only. And no one at that meeting was aware of that. ADSA is a magnet school, but it is being treated like a dumping ground. It is time for the board members to take a deep breath and clear your heads. You have fixated on a new Dennis campus since last September. You ignored your own architects about why Lincoln Park was not a good location and plowed ahead anyway. Okay, then let's talk about the idea that taxpayers need to be involved in ongoing planning. What was the superintendent's response? No to personal meetings. Let's send out a survey. To whom? What questions? Surveys are about as good as their design. We believe that all Decatur should be contacted and ask their opinion on what? New Dennis School, use of Woodrow Wilson, rehab of STEM, new STEM building. I understand that Dennis households are being currently contacted. Is that your survey? What about the rest of Decatur residents? I was at the meeting and cannot tell you what this information gathering survey is meant to collect. Please, 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 gather your wits about you. Don't rush headlong into something just because you see that shiny new thing in front of you. Thank you.
We will move on to board discussion. Is there anything the board wants to discuss at this time?
Yes, I have a couple of things. Excuse me. First, in notes for the agenda, there was mention of alternative education program going to Garfield. What specifically is meant by, I know what alternative education is, but we have different alternative education programs. I didn't know what specifically. This is the first I knew about this.
I'm sorry, for your mask, I didn't hear the whole question.
Alternative education, there was a note about alternative education program being moved to Garfield. What specifically are we talking about there?
The current Harris Alt Ed is moving to Garfield, that's all.
Okay, all right. Because sometimes when we talk about futures in Milligan and,
No.
okay, all right. And then the other thing is the meeting a month ago where there was a presentation on going beyond the current strategic plan. I was talking on the phone, but I know Reagan talked a lot about getting some input from the board about that. And I thought that was going to be on the agenda tonight. So is there a plan for that to be discussed with administrative staff?
Yeah, so we're actually going to conduct another work session with the board so we can have more discussion on that.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're on, because I've put together some notes that I have, but I'll save that for then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a quick question regarding the October 15th deadline for immunizations and physicals. I'm not trying to put our nurse on the spot, so you don't have to get up, but I just know a couple of years ago, it might have been around the COVID time, I know the health department was only doing immunizations by appointment only, and so I know some students were missing those deadlines because of the appointments. Do you know if that's still going to be an issue this year? And I also know when that was an issue, the schools were making accommodations, like with the physicals, it was like, you're okay pending your immunizations. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, what we've done is that the Macon County Health Department has contacted me. They are making appointments. They're not doing a walk-in clinic. We have limited resources with physicals, with SIU. Am I saying that right? SIU and Crossings because of staffing. We've done everything we can. We've done the robocalls, I believe, have gone out. The student services is positioned to help in getting the kids going. We're checking how many people have signed up and are currently enrolled in our schools. We're trying to get that so we get a good number. We can get them and contact them. So there are many variables going on here. They're not necessarily positive, but we've done everything,
Okay, so can we just keep maybe sending out some kind of a notification letting parents know, hey, the deadline is approaching, there's a chance your immunizations will be delayed as a result, just so I think it will help the school nurses, and it, of course, also helps the parents.
Well, I guess I'm really going to tell you that saying that we're going to delay, that could be delayed, we have to wait for it to be delayed. There's different factors there. They could run out of immunizations. However, they've assured me that they've ordered enough that that won't happen. Okay. We've been reminding them. They get reminded in April. We send something out. That is part of when they sign up online. That's what they're supposed to do. So we're going to have to, in my opinion, out and how this works really is table that because we hope that the community will do and listen what they have. And I know that Denise and Maria have done everything they can possibly do. And the schools, the principals are trugging along with the secretaries. So, okay.
All right, but we are going to still keep sending out the robocalls though for reminders for the deadline. Okay, that would be great.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? We will now move on to reports from administration. I turn this over to Superintendent Clark as she presents an update first read on policy 2:70, vacancies on the school board, filling vacancies.
As we're going through our policy updates with press, as you know, they're in the process of getting all of our information together so that we can review the policies and we can get them reposted online, and they're also working with procedures. This particular policy did not have all the requirements that you would see in the press update, so I'm adding what you see in red below, which basically says what the board should do within 60 days of a vacancy occurring at the school board level, and it is outlined as agreed to in section 3-14.2 of the Illinois School Code. And when it goes down to the very bottom, it also discusses what to do if whether or not someone can be elected or appointed. So really all I'm doing is trying to get this updated along with other policies you're going to see coming before you as we are moving along with getting things totally updated from policy 2 all the way up.
Questions? Alrighty. Anything else?
That was it.
Okay. We will now move on to roll call action items. Do we have a recommendation for the personnel action items?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the personnel actions listed in the memo from the Human Resources Department as presented.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Dr. Collins Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Scheider?
Aye.
Ms. Banks? Mr. Oakes,
Aye.
and Mr. Dion.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the employment of an interim Director of Human Resources?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the employment of Deanne Hillman as interim Director of Human Resources as presented.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, this was posted, right?
Yes, actually, it was posted a few times. It was posted April 27th through May 25th, and then from May 27th through June 12th. Interviews took place on June 14th, June 22nd, and July 27th, and then we had a final round of interviews on August the 3rd. We also had a search firm get involved because we were not, getting a lot of candidates, and so that search firm was on June 28th, and then applicants once again was reviewed, and we'll be making a recommendation to the board.
Okay. So if there's a chance that somebody didn't see that, then they may have not been looking for the correct listing.
That is
If they were
correct,
looking
and we
for it.
did have it posted quite a bit.
Okay. And if once we fill the position, we'll probably have Deanne on and is needed to kind of keep.
Yeah, she will be training. Her days is not to exceed 120 days if approved by this board. And once, right now, we're in the beginning of the school year, so we're going to need her every day. But once we get started and get our person in place, then she will tailor off and be as needed.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the public knew that and we weren't accused of corruption again.
Anything else? Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Scheider.
Aye.
Mr. Oakes.
Aye.
Mr. Dion.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Miss Banks. Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
And Dr. Collins Brown.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the employment of an assistant principal at Hope Academy?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the employment of Benjamin West as an assistant principal at Hope Academy as presented.
We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Dr. Collins Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Dion.
Aye.
Mr. Oakes.
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Scheider.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
And Miss Banks. Speak up a little louder for me. Thank you. 7 ayes, 0 nay. That's
Motion
okay.
carried. Do we have a recommendation for the employment of an assistant principal at MacArthur High School?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the employment of Elizabeth Williams as an assistant principal at MacArthur High School as presented.
We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Oakes. Mr. Oakes.
Aye.
Miss Banks.
Can't do two things at
Miss
once.
Banks. Dr. Collins Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Mr. Dion.
Aye.
And Mr. Scheider.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. I understand that one of our two new, I got fingers pointing all over the place.
They're both.
Both of you get to stand up and come forward.
They look nervous.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to serve our community here, and that I'm really looking forward to putting Hope on the map for a lot of good things in the coming years.
All right,
So
sounds
thank you for
good to
that.
me. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a recommendation for the fiscal year 23 salary recommendations for administrators, administrative support staff, ancillary job coaches, parent home educators, school family liaisons, and hourly nurses?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the FY23 salary recommendations for administrators, administrative support staff, ancillary job coaches, parent home educators, school family liaisons, and hourly nurses as presented.
We have a motion.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Everybody needs to understand that this is not a cash giveaway or raises. This is the only way. It's, correct me if I'm wrong, that administrators get raised. They're not represented by unions, so nobody negotiates their contracts for them. This is the only way they get a cost of living increase. They're not getting a huge pay bump. It's just a normal thing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Oaks.
Aye.
Dr. Collins Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Scheider.
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Dion.
Aye.
Ms. Banks. Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the flexible seating for Muffley Elementary School?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the flexible seating for Muffley Elementary School as presented.
Can I have a motion?
Just have a question first.
Nope.
Oh, we have to have a motion
We
first.
gotta
I'm
have a
sorry.
motion and a
I'm
second
sorry.
first. You can make a motion if you like.
So moved.
Okay.
All right.
Motion made.
Who's the second? Who's second?
I think I read it, but I don't think I
Second.
totally understand what the
Who
flex.
made the motion? I made the motion. Okay.
Second.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry. Go ahead, Al. Sorry.
Thank you.
Just could we have a little explanation of what meant by flexible seating?
Of course. Who would like to come up? Would that be B&G or would that be Mary Ann?
That was my same
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening. So the question is, what is flexible seating?
Yeah.
So it's just movable furniture around the room. So for students to that learn differently, they might have a standing table, wobble chairs, desks that can go into groups and individual.
That's what a lot of schools already have, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
That sounds suspicious
seen
like
that.
a desk.
Kind of what I thought.
It's
That
just
sounds like a desk and chair to me.
and flexible is just for it
For
could
the
be
mat,
desks and chairs. It could be the wobble stools. It could be
Right.
the like a beanbag chair. It's anything that gives students different ways to learn.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do we have an idea? Like, are we putting these in every classroom then?
These
that
were
the-
purchased with title funds. So if they had the money, then some of the schools decided that they wanted to purchase and use their funds for this. I think when I was on maternity, we had a couple of other buildings that purchased flexible seating as well.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying, is this for every classroom or just certain classrooms? Or do we
You mean
know
at
the-
Muffley?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'll have to get back to you on that one. I'm not positive. I believe that it's to try to meet the needs of different spaces because I think some of the new classrooms already had some of the flexible seating. So it's trying to integrate that in throughout the building.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll get a more concise answer to you.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Should we try this again?
Okay. Ms. Banks? Ms. Banks? Mr. Scheider?
Aye.
Mr. Dion?
Aye.
Dr. Collins Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
And Mr. Oaks.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation to award a bid for electrical upgrades at the Stevenson building?
Yes, I recommend the board approve and award the bid for electrical upgrades at the Stevenson building as presented.
A motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just kind of curious what all we're talking about here. Like, does everything need upgraded or just certain things? Do we have a ballpark on cost?
No, this is primarily to put in new service connection from the power pole into the main panel coming into the building and all the all the wire and everything associated with that.
Okay. Thank
Just
you.
to upgrade the service to the building itself.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion?
We got a motion
We
and
have a
second
motion,
on
we
the
have a
floor.
second, we have discussion, can we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Scheider?
Aye.
Mr. Oaks?
Aye.
Dr. Collins Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Banks? Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
And Mr. Dion?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for a demographer for Decatur Public School District 61?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the demographer for Decatur Public School District 61 as presented.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'm concerned from what I've heard from the previous use of a demographer. Our school classroom sizes didn't turn out to be very well predicted, and we're talking about using the same firm. And I didn't know if there were bids, if we had choices among different firms. I'm not really thrilled with the idea of hiring the same firm that I think, from what I've heard from many people, did not produce a good result of how we should plan how many students should be in what school.
So it depending on what the board gave direction for in terms of the demographer is how you ended up with the results that you received. I wasn't here, so I can't speak to that. I did read your report, and the information within it was spot on. In fact, the information he provided that should be effective in the next 2 or 3 years, we are currently at right now in terms of enrollment numbers. So we do need to get someone in here that is familiar with the district and our schools so that we can get a true projection of where we're headed.
So you're saying it's how we use the information that needs to be improved.
It was the question that I don't know what questions were asked that made him get the information that we received. I read the information when I got here. I understood what was in it, and we do need to have another study.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
Why do we need to have another one now?
Because at the time of your study, it was projected within the next 6 years, your enrollment numbers will be around 76 to 8,000 in the next 6 years. You're currently there right now. So if this is going to continue, we need to know that. So we wanted to make you aware of what was going on.
Okay, well, I'm kind of with Alan. As my concern is that we're going to do this, and then the report's going to show that we need to, I don't know, consolidate more schools or consolidate more classrooms, and I don't think we can do that right now. So, I mean, is this...
The report is going to show your projections coming up. It's up to us as the board, when I say us, you,
right,
to determine next steps, but you need the factual information to make those solid decisions.
He's just giving us data.
That is correct.
But I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds here, but he's utilizing, I worked with this gentleman when he did it before. He uses a certain kind of regression line that works in a straight line, but if you follow it along a trajectory, eventually you just get to zero, and that's not going to happen. There's not going to be 0 students in the school district, so there's there's different forms of regression that you can use. I was concerned that he wasn't utilizing them, but we can talk about that with him when he's here.
Yes.
Where's the data come from?
Census.
Well, if our census is going down as bad as like what Mr. Jenkins said, I think it was him in his questions. It was, if it was not you, I apologize. I mean, we will get to 0 at some point, it seems like.
You mean extinction? Probably not. No, yeah, but I mean, it's just that
people are leaving.
It's the nature of regression that eventually it will hit 0 along a long enough timeline, but that won't happen. So you'll need some sort of model that curves, that'll level out, or at least it's
right. And my recommendation would be, even with this new study that's being done, just like we are right now, he predicted something in the future. You see where we are right now. You can immediately go back and say, hey, let's look at this, because we may even see an upswing. You don't know. But you do have to have some answers.
Is the data collected by neighborhoods indicator? I mean,
I would have to get that information from him. I don't have that with me right now, but you are correct in terms of...
It comes from census
the
tracts.
census report, but I don't know what other things that he will utilize.
With what frequency do school districts generally have this completed? I mean, are we just wanting, is the reason we're doing this now because the data from the last time is showing, okay, this is happening now and we only have however many years left of this estimate that was provided, and we want more data as we're planning for buildings? Or is this something that's done on some routine basis, by districts similarly situated? I'm just curious about the tickling system for...
So I will tell you that districts do things differently. When I came on board last year, I noticed the enrollment numbers declining. So I took a look over the years and said, hey, something's wrong. And we need to take a look at what is going on. Where are our kids going? Where are our families going? Is this something we're going to see over the next 3 to 5 years? Because that's important to have.
I don't think it's surprising that enrollment's going down. It's going down all over the nation. There weren't as many children born. I was just at a conference where I was on the train coming back from, and they talked about the 08-09 recession, huge drop in the number of births at that time. So I don't think it's that atypical that things are going down. I'm not sure we need to have a demographer right now already, but...
And I hear you, but if you would... When you're looking at data and you have a projection of something that should happen years from now and we're already there, you need to find out why.
But I guess my question would be, when we had the last one and he or she predicted where we would be, did we not try to figure out why then?
I don't know. I wasn't here.
So, I mean, is this something that we should table until we have more information, or just something that everybody wants to go ahead and vote on?
I would like for you to vote because I am concerned. I would like to know what is happening in the communities. I would like to know where we are.
Because this will impact facility planning.
It's going to impact everything that we do, even with curriculum. It's going to impact everything that we do.
How will it impact curriculum if our population's going down?
Because we need to plan for what we have, and we're looking at space. We're looking at making sure that we can provide the necessary grouping for kids. We're talking about kids that are in advance that need more engagement or rigor. We want to be able to provide that. If we are
right, but we're not providing that now. We've had,
but we have to. Is where I'm going.
But that's my point. Why are we going to waste money for a demographer if we're not doing it currently? Because I've been up here for a year preaching about some of these gifted students who need more, I guess, more advanced curriculum, and I've had parents reach out and complain about that, and we still haven't done that. I mean, our whole summer school was not even geared towards that.
So I can't speak for what has happened in the past. I can only speak for what my goals are in the future, and we need to provide those things for our kids. So I need to know how limited I am going to be in terms of resources and where my kids are going to be at the time.
Kevin, I think what you're saying is a valid issue, but I don't think that's going to be addressed through that. I think it needs to be addressed through curriculum decisions. And, that needs to be a separate project working on the curriculum in this district. And
no, I agree, but I mean, replying to her comment.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just highlighting that what you say is important, and we need.
Thank you.
We do need to look into it in our curriculum discussions a little bit more.
But this is just a document that describes the reality we're acting in.
Yes.
And I would offer, for whatever it's worth, the services section of the agreement does provide a pretty comprehensive list of what the report will include and what information it's going to try to provide for us as we move forward. So it's like 3 paragraphs of services and information that will be in the report.
Has everybody looked at the previous demographer report?
No.
It's like 20 pages long. It's
There's additional information on there that would look at a census tract, tell you what students attend the district, which students attend other schools within
that's
town.
public information.
It's
Yeah,
public
market
information.
share versus public versus private is all tracked, but this person puts it into an easy to understand package. He's not doing any original work here. He's using publicly available information and packaging in a way that's useful.
He's looking at population flows, what part of town are the people moving out of into. I think it's valid. So, are we ready to have a vote?
Andrew, and just to expand on what you asked, I believe it was done in the spring of 2018 was the last one.
It's old. Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Collins Brown,
No.
Ms. Banks, Mr. Oakes,
Aye.
Mr. Dion,
Aye.
Mr. Scheider,
Abstain.
Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
and Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
I have 5 aye, 1 nay, and 1 abstain.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the device management software renewal?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the device management software renewal as presented.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Dion,
Aye.
Dr. Collins Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Scheider,
Aye.
Ms. Banks, Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
and Mr. Oakes.
Aye.
7 aye, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the Decatur Public Schools Curriculum Alignment LEAD proposal?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the Decatur Public Schools Curriculum Alignment Lead Proposal as presented.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I opposed this a year ago. I have 3 things that I'm concerned about. First off, it's $250,000 for a consultant firm. We have we have curriculum and professional development staff. From what I read, it's about professional development for the principals to work on curriculum, and it seems like we have the staff to do that. So I don't see the need for a $250,000 expenditure. I don't also know if we've looked into what the Regional Office of Education can provide. They provide free professional development in a lot of areas. I'm not sure if they do in this area, but I don't know if we've looked into it. And the final thing that I'm very concerned about, that's in addition to my opposition last year, is that in the past year, I've been flooded with information from various people in the different schools about how our administrative staff is overwhelmed. When there are so many vacancies, they are filling in as substitute teachers a lot. They are given many tasks, and to add to what they're being done, I think, can be a problem. I would welcome, I can't speak for all the administrative staff, and I would welcome their input. So at least I think we should table it till we found out their input on how this affects the performance of their job, because I think they are just being overwhelmed with so many things that they can't help unless they just want a classroom go without a teacher in the room. So I think those things need to be concerned. So I definitely will be opposing this. If someone wants to table the motion because of the third thing I just said, I'd welcome that also. But I just wanted to say that's why I'll be opposing it.
Okay. Mr. Dace, would you step to the podium?
Now, is this a professional development thing? Is that what this is?
This is more like curriculum implementation as well, but he's going to also speak to that. This is about the efficacy piece of the actual curriculum implementation.
Okay. And real quick, I just wanted, is what he said right, with people in the district are able to do this, or is this?
I'd like to know as well. I mean,
Yeah.
Al brought this up last year. I mean, if he's wrong, then show him he's wrong. But if he's not wrong, then
Do we need to talk about tabling it before Jeff talks?
Well, I think you need to know what it is about so you can make that decision.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, to give you some background history, this district did not have a curriculum before this company partnered with us. So, year one of the development, developed a curriculum with teacher input and teacher voice in English language arts and mathematics. The next year, we started developing common assessments. This is the third year, so naturally when we talk about leadership, working with the leadership to use the monitoring tools to make sure that the curriculum that we have in place is being implemented properly and that we're using the resources properly so that it is effective. The other issue of using ROE, I don't know if you all know or not, but ROE was not approved as a learning partner for this year. So that's one avenue right there. Lead 180, if this is not approved, we're going to lose access to Lead 180, which is the curriculum for this district. That way you'll be going in blind again. So teachers may be teaching what they want to teach. We may not have standard-based instruction. So if you're talking about improving, as the lady said, improving test scores and improving basically not even test scores, just making sure that our kids are ready for the next grade level, this is going to throw a big wrench in that. Lead 180 has been leading our curriculum alignment for the last 3 years with teacher voice, with principal voice.
So in those 3 years, have we seen an improvement in measurable data? Or, I mean, so that's one thing we hear a lot is that, the reading level of students and, career, well, obviously career readiness was one thing that was mentioned. I know we've got pandemic data in there, but do we think that there has been an improvement in outcomes using this?
Yeah, and the first year that we did use them was a year that we did see growth. If you heard the last presentation that I gave with the data, this was the first year that we sustained an upward trend from the fall to the winter to the spring. Usually we go backwards. So I would say this is helping us.
So what you're saying is, if we don't approve this right now, we lose the license, and we're going in, we're utilizing materials that we're not authorized to use anymore.
Correct.
Okay, great.
When I first joined the board, and maybe this isn't related to this, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're implementing a curriculum, it takes a number of years for it to figure out if it's working, right? And so some of the feedback that we received, and this was prior to you joining, Mr. Dace. So, obviously, let me know if I'm off track, but that a lot of times districts run into trouble because you adopt a curriculum and then you switch it before you really see if it's working or not. And we also have the pandemic, that is affecting this or not. One thing, I guess, so I don't know. So that's one thing I'm going to hang out there. But two, the learning walks, are these the learning walks that I hear about, like where there are numerous, admin go, like you're there, other people are there. What is the learning walk?
We're talking about two different things.
Are we, okay.
So right now we're
Because I
talking
see
about a
learning walk
curriculum.
in the
And then,
paperwork.
okay, so what he's talking about is teachers being able to utilize curriculum so that they can increase academic achievement.
Okay.
What you're talking about is principals going into the classrooms or their support going in the classroom to assist with that implementation, to answer questions, to make sure that they're staying focused.
So that's the learning walk.
Am I getting it right or wrong?
Yeah, the learning walk is tied in directly and indirectly, because when we talk about curriculum, when the principals and administrators go into the classroom, it gives them sort of like a playbook and close proximity of where the teacher should be. It may not be exactly, week by week as far as with the units and how the guide has been laid out, but they'll be in close proximity, and it gives the administrator something to go off of as far as standards and skills that the teacher should be addressing. But I want to address, you mentioned, because you were, and I'm glad you remember the conversation before 3 years ago, the misunderstanding here is programs versus curriculum. A curriculum is standard based, where we're dealing with skills and standards, versus programs. We have a science program, we have a math, reading program, which are resources that we use to actually teach and guide the curriculum. A lot of people mix the two up and say, oh, this reading book is the curriculum. That is not the curriculum. That is the resource that we use to teach the curriculum.
Got it. Thank you for that.
From what I read, I didn't understand that this was a license that if we don't approve this, then we cannot use any of the curriculum anymore?
Correct, because this is, again, we did not have a curriculum. This is the company that helped us develop it. So we're going to have to continue to, one thing, the price will steady go down, but we're still going to have to access the resources on their site.
So we were locked into multi-years of expenditures by buying this.
Multi-year, the curriculum development is multi-year.
But at the time, I understand what Al's saying, but the time to look at this from a critical standpoint is approve it now and observe it for the next year. If we are not happy with this, we can't pull the license 1 week before school.
Correct.
So if we're not happy with this, we use it for the next year and look at it with a real critical eye over the next year, and then we make a decision.
Which we should do every year. Every program should be evaluated.
But,
so
some
whatever
board
questions,
members are not happy with this, and so if it's something that we can take a real hard look at, when is the timeline correct to start saying, hey, this ain't working? We need to look at another option.
Seems like the renewal's, conveniently always going to be a week
yeah,
before.
this is right before school. So when is the right time for us to start evaluating this at the board level and say, hey, maybe we want to look at a different vendor, or take a local approach like Al talks about?
Yeah, you can start evaluating. When we're talking about a school year, you can start in the winter, start in the spring. This is actually late, so part of that is on me, because we had a lot of big ticket items and just didn't want to hit you all with $2 million in one board meeting. But you can evaluate periodically throughout the school year. Right now we use assessment scores, but we have common assessments that come from Lead 180. So if you all ask the questions, we'll have the answers for you. And then you'll know, like, hey, this is effective, this is working for our students, and we'll know ahead of time if you all want to go in a different direction. But right now, this is the blueprint of the curriculum that these teachers have to go off of for this district.
So the blueprint hasn't changed then in the last 2 years. It's just a matter of keeping the license and helping new teachers and principals understand it better.
Correct. And part of this, when new teachers come into your district, they struggle more when they do not have a curriculum. So they have something to go off of. But again, it's all about whenever you all want to evaluate this, whatever questions that you have no problem. Lee 180, myself can answer them.
I was just more concerned about teachers, veteran teachers, being thrown something new every year, but they're not being thrown something new every year. They were given this 2 years ago, and then they're just staying to work with this now.
Correct, and we're enhancing this each year. I am a big proponent of we don't need any new programs, anything new. We're trying to master and get a feel for this. So yes, we can use this longevity. We keep switching up things, then yeah, they're going to get more and more frustrated. You already know. Teachers just wait for the next wave.
Right.
I'm trying to stick with this.
Okay. No, thanks. That's why I was partly concerned about also.
Can we maybe make a note to do like a follow-up at the semester change, just for a status, or just a report?
Yes, I can do that. Would you want it in a presentation?
I think you'd want to see the numbers.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay.
Presentation. I mean, if it's working, then it's working, but we need it to be demonstrated that it's working.
Okay.
Maybe
Any
like
other
a quick dashboard that shows us what's going on, and then a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Less than a 10-minute listen to somebody talk about it,
Yeah.
And
okay.
maybe, I know that Jeff comes and talks to us multiple times during the year about different things we have going on. I think if it's just a brief, check-in, it can even be part of something else he's bringing to the board. I don't think it has to be like a major, but just a check-in.
It's an update.
Yeah, an update.
Got it.
Okay,
Thank
but
you.
and then if we decide to table this for, a couple of weeks, does that affect anything?
Yes.
Okay, could you elaborate on that?
On the
please?
effect that I just said, it's going to affect the access to the curriculum. The longer you table this, the longer it's going to take for them to access the curriculum. So,
how?
You table it 2 weeks because Lee 180 right now has the rights to this site. So that's why I said we're dealing with professional development with the principals and with PDI staff. So the cost is going to go down because it's a gradual release. They're showing us how to effectively use the documents. So when they train us, and then we can take that over. So now it's in-house. All we will be paying for is the license to access the curriculum.
Okay.
Any more questions?
I just want to comment. I will support it now. I'm not happy about the whole nature of how this works, but I wasn't involved in the initial discussion of deciding on this curriculum, so I should go along with that. I do want to, in the future, look at how much more we can use our own staff for development of curriculum and training of people with our professional development staff.
And it looks like we're almost getting a 50% discount, so that's good.
Okay.
Take whatever we can get.
Right.
All right.
All right, roll call vote.
Miss Banks? Mr. Scheider?
Aye.
Mr. Oakes?
Aye.
Mr. Dion?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
And Dr. Collins Brown.
Abstain.
I have 6
Thanks,
aye,
Jeff.
0 nay, 1
Thanks,
abstain.
Jeff.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the purchase of 3 pre-owned 2022 Chevy pickup trucks with utility beds?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the purchase of 3 pre-owned 2022 Chevrolet pickup trucks with utility beds as presented.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think I've talked to Ken and Mike about this as far as, and I read an article this summer about how Ford is really pushing electric vehicles, and I didn't know if we are close to having that as a possibility. We talked about that a year ago, because down the road I think that's going to be a great cost savings if we can start buying electric.
I'm not aware of any availability. Is this on?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not aware of any availability of electric vehicles.
And I
at
wasn't
this
sure
point,
if it was.
so-
I just didn't know where. I know I see vacant lots on a lot of the car dealers, so I understand.
Now,
But I just wanted to mention that as something we hopefully can keep looking for.
I'm sorry, Al,
Okay.
did not interrupt you. Are these vehicles available?
Yes.
Because I know we've approved some purchases of other vehicles that never showed up or took months.
Yes.
We never could get them.
These are pre-owned. very low mileage. I mean, 5,000 mile type mileage.
Wow, okay.
But they are on the lot. Those I mentioned a couple times in the weekly updates. I think the last 2 weeks that Ford Motor Company canceled that order, and so we occasionally take an opportunity to seek out used, and that's how we found these.
And so we did get our money back for those other ones, correct?
My understanding, there was no money down on those.
Okay.
So yes, there's no.
So we're not out
cost.
that
That's
money.
correct.
Okay.
We never bought them, right? We never.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So what do you mean? You said you don't know of any electric vehicles. Do you mean available or that would fit the requirements?
I'm not aware of any available.
Okay.
And then, I've not seen any specs on what's out there either.
Yeah.
So that would be an educational process, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, there's the Ford Maverick, the Rivian's got some.
You've been shopping?
Yeah, I know.
Keep an eye on it,
I don't know there's anything available there, and obviously there's a certain size and type of vehicle
Yeah,
we need
yeah.
to accomplish the work we're doing. So.
And I do appreciate all the work you've done on. I know all the with the horrible availability of all vehicles day to day. I know you've put a lot of work into this, so I do appreciate that.
I like I said, the other day I mentioned in the weekly update, we had one within 24 hours it was already gone. So we have to be very proactive.
It is kind of surprising to see the low mileage on those.
Yeah.
And being used, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Oaks?
Aye.
Dr. Collins Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Scheider?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Dion?
Aye.
And Ms. Banks? 7 ayes, 0 nay.
Motion carried. Do we have a recommendation for the purchase of a pre-owned 2020 Chevrolet Colorado pickup truck?
Yes, I recommend the board approve the purchase of a pre-owned 2020 Chevrolet Colorado pickup truck as presented.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Not a Silverado?
Sit down.
Car shopping and roll call vote.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Dion?
Aye.
Ms. Banks? Dr. Collins Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Scheider?
Aye.
And Mr. Oaks?
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nay.
We will now move on to our consent items. Does anyone want any item pulled from the consent items to discuss and or vote on separately? Do we have a recommendation for the consent items?
I did. If you're asking for not pulling, but I wasn't sure what the mental health consultant contractual relates to our other mental health program that we have. I just wasn't sure how they connect.
Thank you.
Per Principal Newpol, it's part of the program that's required for preschool.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's all I needed. So it does need to be pulled from my point of view.
So then now I'm concerned because she's what, evaluating the students? So I guess what's the role of this person at?
I'm guessing maybe a grant requirement?
It is part of her grant requirement. You got the grant information.
Okay, so if it's well, but still, how is this part of the grant, but Cole Counseling is not? I guess.
So, okay, I'll let you talk about the grant piece. So I'm gonna talk about co-counseling. And remember, we brought her in separately, and that was with her working with specific schools. So you approved her to continue that work with these schools. This recently came about when we were looking at when she was doing her grant, that this was one of the requirements in her grant. So I'll let him explain that piece of it.
So according to the contract and working with Principal Newpol, they will provide 3 hours of reflective consultation, provide training based on the needs of the site, but more important, they'll make recommendations or suggestions to the parent educators, citing specific activities to be implemented on behalf of the well-being of the mother, infant, child. Household will be provided. In collaboration with the parent educator and family services will identify those responsible for implementing such activities. So this is, and I'm not a pre-K educator, so this is designed to those early intervention services for the pre-K program.
Okay, I'm sorry. You have to say that again. I did not absorb that. Isn't that partly what the early childhood education teachers do?
It's a great question because I'm not a pre-K educator.
I don't know that.
So I'm gonna lean on the fact that this was brought to me by the professional in the building, Mrs.
Okay, so again, this person,
yes,
the role of this person is what? To evaluate the
provide 3
teachers?
hours to provide I'm just going to read for the same thing you have. Provide 3 hours per month of reflective consultation following the frameworks of, and it lists those frameworks, which is provided to home visitors, supervisors, coordinators, and intake workers. Provide training based on the needs of the site, which would be purging. Discuss relevant issues and concerns of the interactions between the parent educator with the families, both that are strictly confidential. Recommendations or suggestions made to the parent educator citing specific activities. The mental health consultant, in collaboration with the parent educator and family services coordinator, will identify those responsible for implementing the activities with specific reference to the family's unique situation and the home setting. If indicators of domestic violence, child abuse, and neglect are suspected, the consultant is mandated to report those to the parent educator and family services coordinator.
It looks like all costs are covered by the grant.
Correct.
itself.
Yes, it's a requirement according to Principal Newpel for the grant. And it is grant funded.
So can we table this until that principal could talk to us about this? Because I'm still not clear on all of the role of this.
So the teachers teach. These guys look for things that they can provide early intervention services for, like he mentioned,
Right, but that's also the teacher's job to know.
No. I mean, because they do home visits.
So I think that too.
Like a social worker.
Yeah.
And early intervention.
Yeah.
Pre-K students.
I think
Sounds like.
part of her program is you have to qualify. Obviously, they have to qualify for their potentially a higher need, group of students and families. And so I think it's all, since it's so much grant funded, then there's these requirements of the grant. Really, this is just.
I would call it wraparound services required by the grant and funded by the grant and recommended and requested by Principal Newpel.
Best practice, it says, from the grant.
Mm-hmm. Any other?
If you'd like more information, I can get it for you tomorrow, but I can't get it for you
Well,
tomorrow.
I mean, I have to vote on it now, so.
Do, or you could abstain.
Which is probably what I'll do. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Roll call.
Dr. Collins Brown,
Abstain.
Ms. Banks, Mr. Oakes,
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Scheider,
Aye.
Mr. Taylor,
Aye.
and Mr. Dion.
Aye.
6 ayes, 0 nay, 1 abstain.
Motion carried. We will now move on to announcements. The Board of Education Administration's.
Oh, that was the consent agenda.
It was consent. They're all under consent.
But we talked about each one individually, so are we?
And we talked about D individually.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to talk about E and F?
Nope. I'm ready to be done.
Okay.
Keep going.
We will move on to announcements. The Board of Education Administration sends condolences to the family of Walter Lee Scott, who passed away Saturday, July 30th, 2022. Mr. Scott was a former coach, dean of students, retired principal from Eisenhower High School. We will now move to important dates. August 10th through 12th are staff work days. August 15th, first full day of school for the 22-23 school year. August 16th, K through 8 grade building open house. The 17th of August, middle school open house. The 18th, high school open house. Please note, October 15th is the deadline for the required immunizations and physicals for the 22-23 school year. The public portion of the next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be at 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022 at the Kyla Administration Building. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
No, second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carried. We are now adjourned.